plan was to land from an overseas trip on a Friday morning and immediately bake Anzac biscuits to bring along to the Country Women's Association tea room at the Royal Easter Show on Saturday. Then the pandemic changed everything. Events were canceled, my grocery deliveries failed to supply pasta or toilet paper, and 14 days of self-isolation loomed. My cupboard of classic Anzac biscuit ingredients, oats, coconut, flour, sugar, bicarb, butter, and of course, golden syrup, seemed poignant and significant. Anzac biscuits are simple, sweet biscuits made by dissolving bicarbonate of soda into melted butter and golden syrup, and then adding the foamy results to a mixture of sugar, flour, coconut, and oats. Both Australia and New Zealand claim the recipe. Not an uncommon situation, the meringue-based pavlova causes similar controversy. Any Australian or New Zealander will have an impassioned view on whether Anzac biscuits should be crispy or chewy. Usually made in April for Anzac Day, Anzac biscuits commemorate the Australia-New Zealand Army Corps' participation in the Gallipoli campaign in World War I. However, despite their status as cultural objects that carry the weight of historic association and myth, as well as present-day notions of national belonging, people bake and eat them all year round. Every Australasian cookbook has a recipe for Anzac biscuits, and when asked to bring biscuits along to a community fundraiser, Anzacs are the biscuit of choice. Looking at my cupboard on day one of self-isolation, I decided that Anzac biscuits had to be the perfect Australasian comfort food to bake during the COVID-19 pandemic. Australia and New Zealand national stories of Anzac biscuits emerged from another world-changing crisis, World War I. Shortages and rationing were common when Australasian identities were baked into being. COVID-19 is not a military threat, and military metaphors do us more harm than good when civic responsibility and solidarity should be our priority. Even though our focus has changed, Anzac biscuits were developed during trying times that speak to current conditions. Scholars and historians debate every aspect of the Anzac biscuits' history. The idea that the biscuits were sent to the front in Gallipoli, let alone made there, has been thoroughly debunked. Yet, origin stories for the recipe remain controversial. With sociologist Shan Supsky, who promotes the idea that the Anzac is a culinary memorial, I think we must understand the origins of the Anzac biscuit in the same way we understand brick and mortar memorials. Just as many roads and buildings across Australia and New Zealand were named Anzac for the Australia-New Zealand Army Corps, so too did a group of recipes arise, coalesce, and were named Anzac in the decade following Gallipoli. Experts also debate ingredients and preparation methods of Anzac biscuits. Supsky finds Anzac biscuit ancestors in Scottish oatcakes, while culinary detective Alison Reynolds looks to the melting method, the part where you melt the butter and golden syrup together, to trace an Anzac genealogy back to ginger biscuits, parkins, and sticky ginger cakes. Australia War Memorial curator Diane Rutherford has experimented with baking historic Anzac biscuit recipes. The results were surprising. One even includes icing. Rutherford's Anzac biscuits are so different from today's that they would likely violate Australia's Department of Veterans Affairs legislation regulating the commercial preparation of Anzac biscuits. To the best of my knowledge, Anzac biscuits are the only biscuit in the world to be regulated by the government. While many state and national governments take an interest in biscuits, for example, by declaring a certain baked good to be the state biscuit, only Anzac biscuits and their recipe are explicitly protected. Whatever their origin point and however we draw boundaries around them, Anzac biscuits are a culturally significant food capable of bringing people together in times of adversity. Last year, I participated in the Cementa Contemporary Arts Festival in Candos, New South Wales. In collaboration with the Candos Country Women's Association, I ran a series of Anzac biscuit baking workshops under the auspices of Tasting History, a 3-year project devoted to biscuits, culture, and national identity. Festival goers joined locals to bake Anzac biscuits in groups over 2 days. We sold what we made to raise funds for Candos CWA community projects. Our gathering in the CWA room seems unfathomable today. Groups of strangers stood shoulder to shoulder, measuring out ingredients and rolling out balls of dough together. But in many ways, our experience in Candos is as relevant as ever. Even, perhaps especially while we are apart, we long for the community that baking together provides. Belgian author and baker Rehula Isavan started the hashtag #BakeCorona, declaring that if we bake it, we will beat it. Thousands of people have joined her on Instagram, posting everything from cupcakes to hot cross buns. Our collective stress baking has given us the toilet paper cake, flourless versions of classic recipes, and a surge in celebrity bakers and chefs broadcasting from their home kitchens. With Anzac Day events canceled or televised, Anzac Biscuits seem poised to have their own Bake Corona moment. I decided to produce an online Anzac Biscuit baking event called Bake Together Anzac Biscuits Live. I invited culinary historian Allison Reynolds to join me as we had been talking about collaborating in some capacity on Anzac Day. Home bakers joined us from across Australia and New Zealand, and from as far away as New York City and London. Over 200 people responded to our invitation, which was promoted by Time Out Sydney and hosted by Samantha. Ali started our Zoom call with a quick demonstration of her crispy recipe, which she developed for her book, Anzac Biscuits, The Power and Spirit of an Everyday National Icon. From what I could tell, everyone who attended was mixing, rolling out, and baking at the same time. Without online meeting platforms, I have no idea how we could have accomplished this. Despite our collective Zoom fatigue, the event had a nourishing and community-building feeling about it. As biscuits went into the oven, many of us fixed cups of tea and sat down to drink them. As biscuits came out of the oven, we held the trays up to our cameras so we could admire each other's efforts. The Bake Together event demonstrates one of the guiding principles of my art practice and research. The kitchen is a space of generative knowledge production. Just like the studio and the laboratory, the kitchen is a place where we learn, experiment, and develop new techniques. The knowledge we create in the kitchen with Anzac Biscuits generates a shared understanding of history, taste, and politics. Participants in Candos talked about Anzac Biscuits manifesting a type of political agency, with one participant mentioning that when she was upset with the government, a refusal of Anzac Biscuits felt like an act of political defiance. The recipe itself provides another example of shared cultural knowledge. Many of us know this simple recipe by heart. When hundreds of kitchens intersected for a few hours in April, this well-loved recipe connected us and united us. With their long shelf life and simple ingredients, Anzac biscuits are a biscuit of survival and resilience, making them the quintessential Australasian comfort food. They remind us of Australia and New Zealand's past, and they invite us to imagine a future without COVID-19 when we might sit down for a cup of tea and a biscuit in person.